Hi, this is your every couple of year reminder from WAPTech and other sources that really should keep doing this, even though a lot of people are getting tired of doing it. That the origin story for contrails being dangerous was originally a name brand misinterpretation of that word to sell food supplements and health supplements that were literal snake oil, that were literally not useful, and in some cases maybe even harmful. I'm going to read the Wikipedia version of the history of this that's currently there, and explain why you can't find the proof anymore for a lot of what I'm saying, and that seems to be on purpose. And it's not some conspiracy to hide the information that would help me debunk anything. It's just incompetence and or greed, usually both. The United States Air Force published a 1996 report about weather modification, and also people could also discuss previous occurrences where we'd do things like using cloud seeding. Stories of unusual patterns of contrails in the sky from airplanes going by began to circulate. The U.S. Air Force was accused of spraying the U.S. population with mysterious substances because the people making the accusation says, I don't know, and somehow that's confirmation of something. This is done from aircraft rather than from the ground, which is actually much more effective, or any other method that doesn't just disperse it. And why would it work if it's moving in the air and not necessarily in your direction? By 1999, just before Y2K, posts on the internet forums and late-night radio host Art Bell's musings and allowing people to use him as a platform resulted in federal officials being flooded with angry calls and letters by year 2000, including death threats and also, in a couple of cases, actual attempts on their lives. A conspiracy theory that grew up from name branding something as something kind of clever sounding, Chemtrail. Now, where does this come from and why is it there? Selling food supplements. Yes, I can sit here and explain to you the reason over time you would see airplanes flying over your area. It's not the trails, it's the airplanes flying over your area because cities got bigger, so got to move the airplane paths in some cases, other cases, other reasons, or just because more cities existed, so more straight lines had to happen. Or they just did better job spacing the airplanes. I could spend an hour explaining that. You could listen to aircraft pilots do that. You could look up the actual history of it. You could look up it being announced publicly that you will notice in the sky more airplanes because we've had to move our skyways. You could have all of this evidence presented to you because if you're watching this video and are a true believer, you have. You know these answers, so I can't talk to you. That's intentional. Obviously. What was this original purpose? Let's say you want to make a quick buck selling fake medication. And you know that the Food and Drug Administration or the equivalent in every other country is going to fight you because you're putting out the reason the Food and Drug Administration exists, just like the equivalent in every other country, putting out snake oil. Snake oil, if you're not aware of it, is not a generic term for anything that's a fake cure. It's ones that cause harm. At least, again, in the original meaning and usage of the word, because, yeah. So anyway, what is this actually based on? Real world, real talk. A group of people were selling supplements because that was really popular in the 80s and even earlier because people would lobby to get rid of regulations under the banner of, I want my freedom, to sell you something that potentially might make you sicker or does nothing. Safe and effective is a dirty word for someone selling you something that's literally just sugar water or some other neutral material that has no effect on you. The idea is if it has no effect, you can't be punished for having no effect on them. Except when they use it as a substitute for real medication or real treatment, in which case they die from their own self-neglect that you induced by lying to them by saying that all they have to do is olive oil or something to solve something much more serious. But let's get on with it. People were selling fake cures, food supplements, or anything else they could get away with because it's big business, because you take in things that are literally cheap not effective, and are neutral, and sell them as a fantastic cure, but you have to watch your wording because you can't make medical claims, but you obviously are. There's a huge lobby for these non-treatments that go out of their... I mean, they'll sue you. At one time, every video on YouTube was flagged because it cut into somebody's bottom dollar here. Okay? So, what was chemtrail? Chemtrail was actually trademarked. Yeah, it was used as a word for the usage of selling something. The reason you can't find it is, mysteriously, someone managed to get them removed. Here's the possibility. You create this word because it sounds like contrail. Perfect. And you put it in, and you even include the little trademark or service mark or whatever, and you say, I will defend to the death that I have the right to use this word. You come up with a meme and use it to sell your fake cure. Okay. Years later, people realize, oh yeah, you invented that word out of your ass. It doesn't have a basis of any kind. Yes, you can look up a history of this word, and you won't find this because somebody made money off of this. They would then license out that word. And then, here's the double entendre with a backflip. Filed a court case through someone else to claim that the word couldn't be used because it was in common usage when it wasn't, so that it couldn't be a trademark anymore, so that the trademark had to be redacted. Not disabled or shut down. It had to be redacted so that the proof that this person invented this bullshit term would disappear forever by getting a judge to do it. How did they do it? The judge was in on selling the food supplements. Now here's the thing. That's a cock and bull story. I left all of that out that you were going to be asking about because I'm not going to answer you. So your mind is going to reel in all sorts of ideas. You'll either be against what I'm saying or for what I'm saying. The manipulation is, if you're already primed, that's the term, to believe what I told you, you will. If you're primed to ignore what I'm saying, you will. And you'll also become much more emotionally invested and yell. Why would I want that? Because it doesn't matter as long as they get your name right. Any news is promotion. It's good for sales. And you're doing this, and the U.S. Air Force puts out a weather modification story. Yes, you will find somebody using the term. Yes, you can look it up. There's a U.S. Air Force thing with the word contrails or chemtrails. Yes, I knew somebody was going to say that. You're going to be posting below. You're not allowed to post. Why? Because I'm going to censor it. Instead of literally putting a spotlight on the wording. I made a video on this a long time ago. See, we found proof. What year? What source? Are you going to actually have a video exhaustively explaining it? Am I tricking you into providing static information and evidence that you can't change later? Is the publication you're going to talk about just the cover, but you're not going to talk about what it actually says in there, which has nothing to do with the term that as you're using and misusing it now? One of the bits of evidence used in this supposed court case, which I'm totally not making up. Yes, I am. Or am I? Boom, boom. You're all doing the song in your head. Was citing the fact that there was prior art for this term, so it should be removed. And therefore, instead of just declaring this trademark, chemtrail, not to be valid, let's redact it so that my friend won't ever be accused of coming up with it. Totally valid statement. Manipulation comes in the form of not providing you with information, not giving you access to it. Now we're going to get to the problem I'm having. Can you find every Art Bell broadcast? He recorded virtually everything. Everybody else would record it too. He goes on for hours and hours. The original long-form podcast concept. Honestly, Art Bell was a good usage of a FCC license, okay? And not fair and balanced, but as close as you're going to get, okay? But, no, factually, trust me, bro, the original usage of the word, not chemtrail, but the concept, was to sell people fake cures for things that were wrong with it. People who had, I'm not kidding, people who had seasonal hay fever, as opposed to normal hay fever, would buy this stuff. Well, it isn't working. Take more. Here's another one. Never admit that you're just selling a non-cure. But they would blame it on anything other than you have an allergy or something. So, also bring up C Griffith and Clifford Carnicom. Now, Carnicom is the one I remember most, but there are about, it always is this way, anywhere from a half dozen to a dozen people who are in an in-group doing something. You know, a secret can be kept between two people as long as one of them is no longer alive. But on the internet, with a web ring, look up what a web ring is. Maybe I'll include a link. You'd set up a ring of your friends on the internet. Totally don't know them, but we're in a ring. Where you'd promote the same idea, and if you did about 6 or 7, every week each of you would come up with a story, and the others would cross-promote that person. Then you'd switch, and everybody would promote you. This agreement between 6, 7, maybe even a dozen or 2 dozen people would work on web rings because you could keep your rarefied group of people that you were shilling to, that you were bullshitting, in your little closed group. Sound familiar to any of you yet? It was for selling poultices and food supplements and fake cures and take this blessed water that we ran past a room with quartz crystals in it, and the origination for this wasn't conservatism. It really wasn't. It was liberalism. Liberals that wanted to do back to nature and blah, 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 getting angry that modern technology would fly overhead and put a line in the sky. And again, if you're not aware of it, the crosshatch pattern is because wind moves. So if you have 2 paths with a plane going this way and then another one going this way, and the wind is moving slightly diagonally, you'll get a crosshatch pattern that will keep drawing these lines. If you're near an airport, and if you were in an area that it didn't do that in my day. Well, there's more planes, and they move the pathways the planes do because city limits got bigger. I don't like that answer. It doesn't matter. It's the answer. And that's the other part of this. If anybody's really not aware of this, the reason people come up with conspiracy theories is to have power over reality. I might have said it at the beginning of the video, but a lie told to people, a mythology, a propaganda piece, is something you can create as a deliberately complete, cohesive universe. Or, if you've looked up any storytelling, you leave out specific bits a certain way, so people keep wanting more. They want you to reveal more of the story. The lore. And that works. The folklore, that's where the word comes from, of your folk tale shouldn't be delivered all at once. You have to tease them forward. And that's how you do sales. That's why you see salespeople leaving out things they know you're going to ask about. I'm glad you asked about that. They already know what you're going to ask. One of the things I do if I'm talking to a salesperson, and I learned to do this, is if I know they want me to ask a certain question, I'll ask something that they would never fucking think of. With computers. You know, when I was doing computer sales and repairs, before that I was a person buying stuff, and I would ask them questions they had no idea about. I would bust them up. Keep them from fucking being salespeople. Learn to do that as a debate tactic. I would let them finish, demand that they let me finish, ask them a question they weren't anticipating, because why the hell would you ask that? And watch them get angry for someone asking literally a simple question, because it made it to where their script was broken up. I mean, I can be underhanded and manipulative too. I will only do it to a person who's doing it to you, though. Anyway, do I have proof of this? Here's what happened to the internet. Usenet got blanked and bought up by some megacorp. GeoCities got tore down. Well, most of this stuff was on personal blogs and pages, like we're doing here. Watch what's happening on YouTube. I wonder if this video will be destroyed. The last video I did explaining this, the last 10, are all gone because my channels were killed. This is deliberate destruction of data. The reason you can't find answers, and the reason RFK Jr. can't find answers, is because the information has been destroyed on purpose. Thanks for watching. Have a good day. Good luck with that. The chemtrail and contrail thing being mixed up has always been based on someone trying to sell you something. It was always a grift. Bye.